Good morning. Am I on? Good morning, Spike.
Good morning, Jay.
Good morning, Douglas. How are you? Did you guys have fun last night? Wow. Well, we thought you would. Usually, on the first evening of this kind of program, the homework is very meaningful, very, very meaningful. And it's meaningful because it starts putting into place the software that drives all the processes. It gives you a perspective that is decisively superior to anyone else you compete with. And it's very, 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 very powerful. What we want to do in the beginning, because we think it's very important to constantly be layering, advancing, enhancing everything that you learn and tying it together. We want to start with table work, and what we want to do is the following. You had 3 assignments, as I recall. The one was to read, well, actually, along 3 assignments. One was to read the advanced strategy of preeminence and then go through the summary points and make notes that would apply mostly to you. And I need to make a couple of comments about them, and I should do it before we start. The second was to go through those 93 referrals, and I did tell you they were highly summarized, but it was a stimulus, like a mind jogger, and I wanted you to see if you could find 3 or 4 or 5 that directly or with a little bit of adaptation could apply to you. And the last thing I gave you was an optional one. I said if you have time, think about your own life, business or personal, and who you deal with that make you feel very, very important, very, very special, and then break down the elements that they do that make you feel special and try to see how those elements might be translated to your business. I want to do 2 things. I have evolved the strategy of preeminence from when it was created and printed and put in that book. Everything, one of the continuously repetitive comments I'll make to you is, in business, you grow or die. You grow in size, you grow in profit, you grow in focus, you grow in knowledge, you grow in innovation, you grow in proficiency, you grow in contribution, or the competition or alternative means will pass you by. So in the strategy of preeminence, when I first created it, that's what you've got here. Over the last year or so, I have evolved it, and there's a couple of elements that I don't think are as clear in there, and I'd like to add them before you do your table work. And Spike, remind me, because I do it sort of mentally. It's not in a formalized way, and if I forget something, you remind me. Some of the additional keys to the strategy of preeminence, besides the fact that you want to be seen as their most trusted advisor for life, besides the fact that you want to think of them always as clients, not customers, besides the fact that you always want to have a hopefulness for them. For example, and we live it, when Spike and I walk on this stage, we have a hopefulness for you, a wish for you that today, and then every day we're on stage, we transfer usable knowledge that can be translated into transactional activities, and those transactional activities will loft your business to greater stature, to greater profit, to greater achievement. That is our heartfelt hope, that you'll be able to work less but accomplish more, that you'll be able to be more strategic. We have a very clear vision. You have to, part of the strategy of preeminence is you have to have a very clear vision for what you want for your clients. That's the next thing. The next thing is in terms of that, because you're going to fall in love with them, and you want to fall in love with them in relationship to seeing their life enhanced, protected, enriched, depending on what your product or service does for them. And you've got to start using what's called future pacing. And future pacing is the process of taking them into the future and showing them and dimensionalizing and demonstrating through word pictures and experiences and emotions what life will be like when your product or service or business is there protecting them or serving them or working for and with them. One of the other key elements of the strategy preeminence, and it's in there, but it's not as clear, is you've got to be masterful at putting into words what people are feeling and have been frustratingly trying to either get closer to, meaning achieve, or get away from, meaning avoid or eliminate, but have never put into words. There are a number of very important elements of whatever your product or service or business does that people really want but have never verbalized. The first time you verbalize it clearly for them, three things happen. Number one, it demonstrates instantly to them that you know how they feel. You understand what they want, either positive or negative, to get away from or get closer to. You have a clear vision for what they're trying to do that even they have. You can put it into words and they never could, and you want to lead them down the path. Number two, they trust you because you're demonstrating empathic, respectful understanding of where they are. So that's the next thing. You got to put it in words, and I'll give you a process later for how to do it if you don't know how, because they have probably the equivalent of Amazon, don't they? Mm-hmm. So we'll give you that later, and it's very cool. But let's see. Hopefulness, empathy, falling in love with the clients, most trusted advisor, for life. It's got to be for life, and it doesn't matter whether you only sell one product right now. That's not important because you want to be in their life as long as you can be a meaningful and the most significant contributor in the categories of knowledge, expertise that you represent. Is there anything I've forgotten?
Just only viable solution.
Yeah, you got to be seen. You want them to see you as the only viable solution to the problem, the challenge, the issue, or the goal or opportunity they're after. And this comes into something we'll talk about later this week, which is helping set the criteria. The first is being able to verbalize it better than anyone else has. And I was going to tell a story, and then we'll do the table work. Years ago, when I had a different model of seminars, we would start the seminar, and for 2 solid hours, we would go around the tables and randomly pick people and ask them to share with us what their biggest business problem, issue, challenge, goal, opportunity was. And it was fascinating. Because we're business owners, entrepreneurs, very, very similar profile to you. It's been that way all over the world. Very similar size profile. And they would struggle trying to explain what they were dealing with. And I had a colleague on stage with me. This is before Spike was in my association. And after they struggled for about 5 minutes, because we've been doing this so long, we'd say, what you're saying is you need to develop a differentiated position that people will see decisively. This is just hypothetically. We would take somebody struggling and say, I'm trying to figure out how to make my business more meaningful. And we would clarify it in ways that were so specific, clear, that you could see their body language relieved. And you could see their eyes twinkle. And you could see their a smile, because yes, for the first time, somebody had put into words what they were struggling with. Well, that was not a unique phenomenon. That's human nature. If you can learn to put into very clarified words for your prospects and clients what they're feeling but have never really clearly expressed, and then show them the path to get there and show them that your path provides them with the only viable solution worth choosing, and show them the benefits you provide, because it's all benefit-based, you own them ethically forever.
Yeah, one of the keys to understanding this is that once people have certain needs met, like survival, food, water, shelter, safety, the highest level of contribution that you can make to another human being is being able to show that you have a deep understanding for them as a person, and you have an appreciation for who they are and what they want. And when you sit down and you have the ability to articulate that, that's certainly meaningful for the relationship. It certainly distinguishes you from your competition or people that provide similar products and services. But being able to provide that solution or provide that benefit after you demonstrated that understanding and appreciation, and be able to do it in such a way that you're doing it not only today, but you're doing it over time, and you're doing it again and again and again, That's why the most trusted advisor for life concept is so important. Because if you're only looking to do a transaction one time with someone, you can provide value, and in many cases they can be satisfied. But they can't feel that deep and abiding connection with you unless they understand that what you're trying to do is to create value for them, not one time, not two times, but every time.
And the key, the reason we, and if I make fun, I got a little dot on my glasses and I'm trying to look through them, I got to get them clean. The reason we're really focusing so intensely on this is that once and after you really master and integrate and are fully enrolled in the strategy of preeminence, Douglas, can we get some fresh hot coffee? And I need like a wet rag for my glasses. Thank you. Once you get completely enrolled and you get your team, all your staff enrolled, and it becomes your cultural business, I guess, philosophy, then you use it to create all your advertising. Then you use it to create all your sales presentation. Then you use it to create all your promotional material. Then you use it to define and form and structure all your communication with the public. And it so transcends you above everybody else because nobody gets this.
Remember yesterday Jay was saying that one of the most impactful and most immediate areas of improvement you can implement in your business is consultative selling. Now we're going to be talking about consultative selling this afternoon or sometime tomorrow, but consultative selling really begins with the strategy of preeminence. Because what you're doing is that you're positioning yourself as an advisor, as a consultant, as opposed to a salesperson. And if you can't have the strategy of preeminence in mind, your ability to be effective as a consultative salesperson or a consultative selling organization becomes diminished. So when Jay talks about the strategy of preeminence and he says that he doesn't teach consultative selling, it's not completely true. What he's talking about is creating a philosophy that's pervasive throughout the entire organization and is pervasive throughout the entire business culture.
In many forms, there are sort of quasi-wonder drugs. Aspirin is like a wonder drug. It deals with everything. I don't know if you use bicarbonate of soda or baking soda, but baking soda in the United States is like a wonder material. You can use it for indigestion. You can use it for scouring your sink. It's got a lot of different things. Well, the strategy of preeminence to a business owner is almost a wonder drug because it gives you the foundation, it gives you the understanding, it gives you the natural motivation and fluid sort of ability to create everything you need. And it's so powerful that even if the words don't come out exactly right in the sales presentation, even if the ad doesn't read perfectly, even if the communication on the phone when they call the order department isn't absolutely exact, if the intention that's driving it is there, it still works.
Point about the strategy of preeminence and the concept of falling in love with your client. Falling in love with your client doesn't necessarily mean giving them everything they ask for or everything they want. I mean, think about it for the people in this room who have children. You love your children, and you want to make sure that you're giving them what it is that they need, and you want to make sure that you give them what it is that you can. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you give them candy 24 hours a day if that's what they want to eat. It may not be the best thing for them. So when you think about falling in love with your client, also think about it in terms of what their needs are, not just what it is that they want.
Yeah, but I like your analogy. Somebody asked me one time when I did a seminar what I thought about the people in the room, and I said, I think about them as open, moldable, trusting, innocent, vulnerable children at age about 5 that have the whole world ahead of them and they just need nurturing and guidance. And Spike's right. You have every right to receive compensation, but the compensation needs to be payment for value contributed. But he's right. You can't give away the store. I mean, figuratively, you've got to be able to be reasonable, but you have to appreciate more and empathize more with their point of view. We get the biggest kick. We do a lot of group training programs at home, and people will come to us with perspectives we've never thought about. Our first inclination is always a knee-jerk you know, doesn't make sense. But then we think, well, gosh, if I were in that position and these things happen, perhaps I would look at it that way, and you have to try to appreciate it. It's a very delicate, but Spike's right. You fall in love with them and you want the very best for them, but you have to allow equitable, fair compensation to yourself so you have the wherewithal and the profit to be able to contribute.
Things that we didn't talk about this morning, and you brought up a very good point, is that the strategy of preeminence certainly begins with the relationship that you have with your clients, but it also extends to the people that you do business with, your vendors, your employees, your partners, and other people that you come into contact with. And this is a concept and a philosophy that shouldn't just be in your commercial transactions. It should be in all your business elements. You know, I was sharing with Jay a couple of days ago, before Jay and I started doing this together, we worked together in other projects, but I used to run very large manufacturing companies, and over the course of years, I literally have had either to lay off or terminate over 1,000 people, which can be very, very difficult. And I know the work that you have is difficult. But by using the same philosophy and the same concept of letting people know that while you have a tough decision to make, but at the same time you have an interest and a care and an abiding concern about them as people, it makes it much easier. And one of the things that I've prided myself on, and this is one of the things that I'm most proud of in my career, not that I've had to terminate or lay off 1,000 people, but I've only ever had 2 people in my career that have not shook my hand when I was letting them go. And I think it's because they really truly understood that while I had a tough decision to make and I really had no other options, what I was looking to do was to make it as least painful as possible and as caring and as with as much concern and sincere appreciation for them in terms of what they've done up to that point.
Now, I'm going to make a point, and you can play off of it, because it's nuances. It's a little bit more nuanced. 2 things. When you exercise the strategy of preeminence, it is perfectly appropriate. When you fall in love with somebody, there's many gradients of love. There's gentle love, there's nurturous love, there's parental love, and in some situations there's tough love. And it's necessary to produce the outcome. We have client relationships where we have a philosophy. We'll be so empathic the first time we give them assignment. If they don't fulfill, we'll give them another. And then we alert them that we have opportunity cost and it's their life and their business we're trying to grow, and we will be tougher on them, don't we? Also, and there's a lot of overlap and integrated similarities in all the things that I have and will be teaching you this weekend. And one is we're going to get into risk reversal and guarantee. Totally different category, but one of the elements of it is mutual performance expectations. There's nothing wrong with expecting the client to do their part too, because it's like if somebody were drowning and they were flailing wildly and pulling you down, you couldn't save them. They got to do their part and relax and work with you. And so I'm getting a little more. You want to comment on that?
No,
Do you agree?
I think it's a great point. In fact, you know, I use the analogy of what we do as parents with children, but also think about other relationships where you have a sense or a feeling of love. I mean, you want to share that love, you want to give that love, but at the same time you expect a degree of love and appreciation in return. And at the last program we were at, one of the points that we made is that if you really truly have a client that you don't enjoy working with, you really truly have a client who takes more money to service than they provide revenue.
Or more psychic compensation.
Or more psychic compensation, more energy. They're just a drain on your system. And in some cases, there may be a client that you have that you just cannot fall in love with. And in that case, in my opinion, you have an obligation to let that person know one of 2 things. That you have a deep desire to treat them with a strategy of preeminence, but in return for that, they have to treat you with a similar level of respect and a similar level of care. And if they can't do that or they're not willing to do that, it's probably better for them to go and receive a transaction or a business relationship with someone else.
Even if you make a lot of money off them. One of the, and I don't know if it was in the 93 referrals, but one of the most interesting referral experiences I ever observed, and I didn't teach this, I learned this. There is a dentist in Australia who used to work 60 hours a week and made about $60,000 Australian, which is 40,000 US dollars, and he was miserable. his patients didn't appreciate him. They didn't make their appointments. They didn't pay their bills. And he was almost suicidal. He was so depressed because he was about 40 and thought, I don't want to be doing this for 20 more miserable years. And he was going to literally either do himself in, quit the profession, but he got a burst of clarity. He decided to fire all his undesirable clients benevolently. He decided to establish a criteria of what he wanted. He wanted a referral-only practice, and he sat down with everyone he wanted to keep, and he established between the two sides a value proposition. He said something to this effect. I want to tell you what you should expect from me every time you come in. Number one, if you have an appointment, you should expect, unless there's an emergency, that I will have you in the chair and treated within 5 minutes. Number two, you should expect that the treatment I give you will be as pain-free as humanly possible. Number three, you should expect that I'll treat you the same way I would my wife, my children, my mother, my father, with the highest level of sensitivity, care, attention, and result. Number three, you should expect that anything I do will last. And if it's cosmetic, that you'll look really stunning and that people will acknowledge you. If I don't deliver that, I shouldn't expect you to pay. But if I do deliver that, what I expect from you is if you make an appointment, you show up when you're supposed to. If you make an appointment and you show up and I do what I say, you pay me then, because I don't want to be your banker. If I do everything I say, I expect you to reciprocally refer two equal quality people to me, clients to me, every 6 months, because I don't want to go out and find clients who don't appreciate me. You appreciate me. I appreciate you. You're the kind of person, excuse me, that I think I can best contribute to, and I think you appreciate it, and you associate with equal people. And he established a mutual performance criteria. And he went from being miserable and making $40,000 U.S. to, one more thing, he said before, it was pretty cool, he said, before you ever come into my operatory, my patient room, we will sit down, and he re-outfitted his whole office. Instead of a waiting room, he turned it into 3 salons, like little booths, and he would serve tea, and he would sit for 5 minutes and have tea and biscuits and talk about their family, because he said, the only people I want as clients are dear friends. If I can't have a really meaningful friendship beyond just in your mouth, I don't want to do it, because that's one of the joys I get, is knowing about you, your family, what's happening, the good, the bad. And he transformed his business, and he started making $400,000 a year and having a great time. So you have the right and the ability. As I said yesterday, when I was talking about the Indiana Jones School of Business, in the middle of the night I woke up and I thought I probably didn't make the point with total clarity. The point was, everyone thought that Indy had to suffer because of knives. He decided, because no one knew he had a gun, he didn't want to play the knife game. He went, pow, I'm going to move on and get on with my life. You have the ability to go, pow, I'm going to move on and get on with my life. But it presupposes and requires you to be able to do something which many entrepreneurs have never done. It's deep, critical, reflective thinking on what you do want and what you don't want. And you really don't know what you do want until you've experienced and recognized what you don't want. That's probably more important, don't you think, Spike? Mm-hmm. Any other comment?
No.
Okay, it's very important. Nobody can be all things to all people, and you shouldn't. As you're developing and exercising and implementing and internalizing the strategy of preeminence yourself, through your team, through your vendors, through everything, you've got to get a clear picture of the kind of clients you want, because those kind of people will appreciate and resonate and bond to you with the strategy preeminence wonderfully. There will always be a category that won't. And you've got to make a decision that you are okay not having that type of buyer, because they will not stay. Somebody told me something years ago, and I'll see if I can state this in a way that will translate. They taught me polarizing. Polarizing, they said it's better to be loved or hated than merely tolerated, because they said in most world situations, unless you do something heinous, you're really not hated. They just are mad at you. They don't like this and they go on somewhere else. And they don't have a lot of time to really worry about getting even unless you do something heinous, something really horrible, which I don't think these kind of people in this room would do. But if they love you, they are your greatest advocates, champions, they stay, they pay, they repurchase, they refer. So I think you want to be very clear on who you want and very clear on who you don't want, and not be rude to the people you don't want. Like, we're very nice. There are people that come to us which we know will never be good clients or seminar attendees, but we try to invest in them anyhow because we want goodwill. We'll give them a CD, or we'll give them a book, or we'll do something that nobody else would do because we still want to practice the strategy of preeminence even in our process of declining their business, because there's still, you can still be very preeminent in saying no. You can still be preeminent in rejecting someone, and that's a really cool thing to do.
No, and I agree with you. I mean, I think it makes it easier to maintain a deeper relationship with the people if they're the right people, but also it's easier to establish that criteria and to get people to understand that if they want to maintain the same level of service, the same level of relationship, the same level of care and concern from you, that there's also an expectation in terms of what it is that they have to do to remain the type of client that you will work with, the type of client that you will treat with the strategy of preeminence, and the type of client that you will fall in love with.
When I started this yesterday, I said something which is very, very foundational. And I said, I respect the intelligence of the audience, like saying I respect the intelligence of my clients. But I do, in the respect, there is an expectation. I want you to respect me. And I want you to respect my intention and my process. And that if I think, even though we're going in this direction, if I think that there's a need to make a parenthetical comment that will help you be better, you're not mad about it. Well, you want the same kind of a reciprocal respect. You want to respect the intelligence, the humanness, the importance of your client. And the client is not just the people who pay you. It's the people sometimes you pay, vendors, staff. Book that you should all read, and I'm most certain it's probably been translated here, don't you think?
It has been.
It's Stephen M. R. Covey. You know Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits man? His son, who's about my age, is named Stephen M. R. Covey. And he wrote a book that's been out about a year, but I'm sure it'd be translated in Japan. It's priceless for you guys to get it and read it. It's called Leading at the Speed of Trust. And his premise, and I agree with it, is that the last frontier of intangible leverage that a business owner, entrepreneur, manager has is trust. The deeper the trust, the longer the relationship, the faster the trust, the sooner they buy, the greater the trust, the more they refer. And he explains very, very clearly the mechanisms, the elements, the factors that you've got to focus on. So I get that book. It's called Leading at the Speed of Trust. It's probably $30. So it's a wonderful book, and I'm sure it's been translated.
It has been. In fact, one of the things that I would mention to as well, and I have a saying, and I'll share more with you about it this afternoon, and that is, with true and honest intent, nothing ever can be wrong. With true and honest intent, nothing can ever be wrong. It doesn't mean that things can't go wrong, because sometimes they will. But if your intent is really true and honest, there's nothing wrong with that. There can be nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to trust, when it comes to the strategy of preeminence, and this does happen, you know, if your intent and if your desire to really use the strategy of preeminence in an ethical, positive, nurturing way isn't genuine, or if you create trust, or you use some of the strategies that you'll learn in Stephen's book, and you earn that trust, and you don't honor that trust, you don't respect that trust, you don't maintain that trust, people won't just be mad, they will despise your business. So it's important that when you earn that trust, that you really are sincere, you really are congruent, and you really are capable of delivering what it is that you promise from a value standpoint, from a trust standpoint, and that you honor and protect and nurture that trust over time.
And I actually have a gift that I can give you, but you have to do something if you want to receive it. I did an interview with him, and it's rather impressive. Mm-hmm. I interviewed him for about 90 minutes or 2 hours, and with all immodesty, I'm a very probing interviewer. And the interview is spectacular, but it is in English. And if you wanted, and you gave me it, I have the rights to use it. I don't have the rights for anyone else to sell it or distribute it. But if you'd like, I would be happy to give it to the people at Learning Edge and let them put it on a website as a PDF file and let you download it. And then if you have someone in your life who speaks decent English, they could interpret it for you. But it's really excellent.
Well, perhaps we could get one interpretation done then.
Yeah, or maybe if one of you want to do it for the whole group,
yeah.
I'm fine with that. Just I need your promise. Don't sell it because it's copyrighted stuff, but I have the right to use it for my seminars. No, I mean, it's wonderful, but I've already probed him on issues that other people never ask, and it's a very good interview. And I'll be glad tomorrow we'll have somebody send it over, and then if somebody wants to interpret it, it's probably 20, or translate, it's 20 pages.
Probably.
But it's wonderful. It'll help you because it probes a lot of really good stuff. But I still would buy the book.
I wanted to just share with you a comment based on what was shared with us. And it is always, I think, more powerful to be able to show something than it is to tell something. However, let's look at what show means. In many cases, it is a visual experience. In some cases, it is visual documentation. But sometimes that showing is actually allowing someone to have a partial experience of what it would be like. And I'll give you an example. If you look at iTunes, or if you look at a lot of the online music sites, Amazon, Rhapsody, and I'm not sure which ones are most prominent in Japan, what they will allow you to do in many cases is listen to about 30 seconds of the song. Think about it when you go to a movie. What they're going to do in many cases is that they're showing you a preview of what the movie's about. So in some cases, you may not be able to physically hand someone something, or in some cases, if it's a song or something like that, you may not be able to physically show them, but you can allow them to experience a part of it through other means.
Between now and approximately 12 to 12:30, which will be lunch, we're going to go through lists of things. Remember what I showed you to take notes, literal notes and then the interpretive notes. Please try to, because we're going to cover probably 30 or 40 points, and some will be repetitive that we will address from a slightly different angle. First thing we're going to start is what I call the 7 marketing concepts they won't teach you at Harvard. These are very basic, they're very powerful, they are very essential. And some of them we've already covered, and we'll cover them again. And Spike and I will take turns to make the process fun for you. First, people are silently begging to be led. And I don't know this with certainty, but my observation is that it's even more true in your culture. However, there is a caveat or a however. They want to be silently led. They're silently begging to be led by somebody they trust has their best interests at heart. And that goes right back to the strategy of preeminence. But you're here because you want us to guide you. You don't want us just to give you a bunch of concepts. You want us to guide you what to do with it, how to do it, where to do it, why to do it. Isn't that true? And it's not just because of our unique relationship. It's because you are a human being. And if you trust Spike and I and our intentions, you want us to lead you. Well, think the same of all the people in your lives. It's certainly true of your prospects and clients. It's certainly true of your team members. It's actually not untrue of your vendors, although you have to work a little harder because they don't know that they're silently begging to be led. It's true of your loved ones. And if you grasp the power of this very simple concept and you exercise it vigilantly, diligently, continuously, and do it through the lens or the focus or the philosophy of the strategy of preeminence, you can be formidable. Spike, you want to do?
Yeah, I'd like to make a point on that because, you know, in order to be able to lead people, you have to be able to be a leader. And sometimes when we talk about the fact that people are silently begging to be led, it makes some people uncomfortable. But think about it. I mean, people follow politicians. They follow entertainers. They follow people that have the ability to create a grander or broader vision, a more pleasurable or more satisfying or more certain experience. And what happens is that through the strategy of preeminence, through your relationship with your clients, one of the things that you can do is create the fact that there's a better opportunity, there's a greater vision that you have for the relationship, a greater vision that you have for them and their business. It's that component that not only creates a desire for people to be led, it also creates a willingness to be led, because there's a hopefulness that you're bringing, there's an expectation you're creating, there's something that's bigger and grander and bolder for them and for their lives and for their business that they can realize through your leadership and through your interaction in your business.
And if you reread the strategy of Preeminence, you will see that one of the foundations is you take the role as a value creator and as a leader. And a leader basically does what is necessary in the best interest of the troops they're leading or the country they're protecting or saving, and that's what you have to do. Spike, you can have that one.
Okay. Tell people what specific action to take, why it's in their best interest, the benefit for doing it, the penalty for not doing it, or moving forward. Essentially what you want to do is that you want to make sure that people are very clear. You know, you can have a great marketing piece, you can have a great sales presentation, you can have a great interaction with someone. But if they don't know what to do and the reason why to do it, the chances of them doing it at that time go down dramatically. I mean, think about when you went to make a purchase on something that you were excited about, and for some reason you decided that perhaps you didn't want to make it at that moment, and you walked away, and a couple of days later you thought, I really don't want to make that purchase. What happens in many cases, even in professional services, even in many businesses, people will make decisions based on emotion, and if they don't have some kind of direction that tells them what action to take, in many cases they get distracted, their emotion wears off, they change their mind, another competitor or another opportunity comes up. But you also want to make sure very clearly that they understand the reason why you want them to take that action and how to take that action, the reasons why. What will they get if they take that action? What will they potentially lose if they don't? What will it mean for them, for their life, and for their business? Why is it that not taking action with you at that time, with your product or your service, is a disservice to them, it's a disservice to their business, it's a disservice to their life, it's a disservice to their relationship. And you want to make sure that they know very clearly what the best way is to move forward, and ideally you want them to take action right away.
And this number 2 is a great basic sort of a template or framework for how you guide, how you communicate, how you write ads, how you create sales presentations, because this has a lot of the components. People need to know what action to take, why it's in their best interest, what the benefit of doing, what the penalty of not, and the best ways to move forward, and why they should move forward right away. We'll get more into this, but it's powerful. Very simple, but very repetitive. Marketing is the ultimate financial leverage you will ever have in your business. It provides you with a greater return on investment if you break it down into its various processes and sub-processes, if you measure it, if you quantify it, and if you project it, than anything else, and it's where you should put a huge portion of your time, your money. Marketing is the ultimate leverage. Spike?
Advertising, marketing is nothing more than salesmanship multiplied. Remember yesterday when Jay gave you the example of what it would be like if you had 10,000 salespeople out there silently generating orders, generating interest, generating product sales or service sales through direct mail? Well, essentially what marketing does, it allows you to, number one, create an awareness of value in the marketplace before your salespeople come behind it. It makes it easier to earn the trust that's necessary to create that sales transaction. But what it does is that it reaches thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of people, and it allows you to articulate your USP. It allows you to articulate your unique benefits, your strategy of preeminence, what it is that makes you unique. And it allows people to become aware of who you are, why they should do business with you, and ultimately how to do business with you.
Now, there's a clarification or a distinction I want to make, and it's pretty important. And for the vast majority of businesses represented in this room, you're going to basically want to use your marketing as in a fundamentally almost a direct response way. You're going to want to use it to evoke direct responses, sales orders, leads, visitations, coming into your facilities, calling your order department, going to your website. there are a couple of very large corporations represented in this room, and the larger the corporation, very frankly, for lots of reasons, their advertising becomes more institutional and more diluted, and it's a little hard to talk to that because there's so many factors besides pure pragmatism that are driving it, and we're not going to basically argue the merits, but we're going to say for almost everybody in this room, this guideline that your advertising, your website, your direct mail, your anything you do in mass is nothing more than salesmanship multiplied. You develop the very finest, the most complete sales presentation, whether it's a complete one, trying to take people to the conclusion to buy something, or whether it's a partial one, trying to get them just intrigued enough, provoked favorably enough, fascinated enough to move to the next level. Inquire, come in, visit your website, your booth. But you have to understand, it's the greatest multiplied sales opportunity you'll ever have, and you should use it as that. And as such, you want to incorporate all the factors. Now, later tomorrow, we're going to teach you the foundations of creating an ad. There's about 7 different formulas we're going to share, and you can choose whichever one makes the easiest sense for you to follow in the beginning. Spike, right after lunch, is going to do a session for you on consultative selling. But what you have to realize is once you've gotten your sales presentation sort of blueprinted to where it's really working, then you want to multiply it to the masses through advertising, through direct mail, through joint ventures that are disseminated, to thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions. And we'll get more into that as we evolve. We just want you to be aware of these fundamental concepts. People don't appreciate what you've done for them or will do for them unless you educate them to the facts. I guess the easiest way is to tell a story. Many years ago, I did a very expensive seminar, and I did it for a bunch of very unique reasons. And the seminar was $15,000 22 years ago, so it was really expensive, 15,000 US dollars. And I wanted it to basically be the most complete education on business building that was possibly available. And so I went through every component, and I made every hour of every day richly controlled by best experts I could hire, the best content, the best exercises. And after I got it all laid out, I realized there was a huge gap. I hadn't done a complete job in teaching advertising copywriting. And the person that I wanted to teach it wasn't there, but I had paid him $30,000 a month earlier to do a different seminar for me, and we had videotaped it, and I had the rights to the videotape. And this is like 22 years ago. And I decided that I would play the videotape. It was a 2-hour videotape. The only problem was every hour of every moment of that seminar was already committed. The only time I had available was to take a lunch. Now, you are very fortunate. They provide you with lunches here. That's great. We don't in our programs, even though they're expensive. People go and pay their own lunches. But the only time I could do this, if I wanted to show this video, was to have lunch. And we're 300 or 400 people there, and it cost me $6,000 to be able to give them lunch that I wasn't planning. Then, this is before electronic. You guys are the epitome of electronic sophistication, but this was before it was all so affordable. I had to rent these humongous projection TVs, and it was not when they were there. Those cost me $5,000. I had to rent a heavy-duty a VHS player. That cost me a couple grand. Then I decided after I watched it that it was really so good I wanted to make a copy for everyone to take home, and that cost me 20 grand. So now I'm into it, an unexpected $30,000 or $40,000. That's the first part of the story. So the day comes. It's like the 4th day of this program. We say, good news, we're going to buy you lunch because we have something we want you to do. They stay in it was like a theater room. They stay in the theater room, and we play this 2 hours. And on the original live program that I videotaped, this advertising expert, because it was a different subject matter seminar, had brought with him a book that he wrote that he gave everybody, because I bought one for everybody. And it was mentioned on this video, and I hadn't caught that. I hadn't noticed that. So the video's over, and everyone comes up to me, and they're mad that I didn't give them the book. And at first I was offended. Actually, I was going to say a foul word, but I won't say it in respect for everybody here. But I was ticked. I was actually more than ticked. Because I thought, you ungrateful so-and-sos. But then I realized they had no reference criteria to be grateful. So I said, I stopped my anger, and I shifted, and I came up on stage, and I said, guys, I appreciate that, but let me explain to you what has just happened. And I went through what happened, that I had to spend $8,000 to buy you lunch, that it was my pleasure, that I had to spend $10,000 to bring in equipment so I could add to your experience, that I had to spend another some $20,000 to make the video cassettes. It was my pleasure, and that I did that. I didn't have to do it. You wouldn't have known it was missed. But when I explained it all to them, then they were very appreciative. The point I'm making, and it's probably long and protracted, is you can't expect people to know and appreciate what you're doing for them unless you educate them. Now, it's very tricky because it can come off as being arrogant. It can come off as being condescending. It has to be done with respectful humility. Is this too confusing, or is it reasonably clear?
It's clear in English.
I know it's clear, but is it okay? You guys grasp what I'm saying? Think it's all right, Spike?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Okay. Bonuses can make a profound contribution to your overall sales proposition, but only if fully valued by your prospect. Let me give you an example. If someone is going in for heart surgery, and you say, if you come to me and allow me to perform the heart surgery, I'll give you a free toaster. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't have any value. One of the things that you want to do if you're using bonuses is a way to enhance your sales, as a way to enhance the value that you create for your clients or your marketplace. Just like Jay said, that you want to make sure that people are educated to the value of what it is that you give. You also want to make sure that it enhances the experience. You also want to make sure that it's a value that they perceive as something that is beneficial to them. It's something that's relevant to the relationship. It's an extension of the value that you create. But in addition to that, I think a lot of times when businesses give bonuses, they assume that it has to be a free bonus. And in some cases it is. But even if you're offering a free bonus, if you're an online marketer and you're selling information products and you want to give a free bonus, one of the most powerful things that you can do is that you can put a value on that bonus. So it's a $495 report, and if you purchase this product, you get that report for free. But in addition to that, being able to articulate the potential impact or the potential benefit of the bonus, in many cases, can enhance the value and the impact of the bonus. And for instance, if that report that was $495 that you're giving away for free was utilized by 100 clients to create $5 million worth of new revenue, and it's not available anywhere else, and these are the secrets, these are the strategies, these are the steps, and the techniques that they used in order to create that $5 million worth of revenue, and it's yours free, and you can't get it anywhere else if you take this action today. Now that bonus, even though it's free, has an enhanced value, has an enhanced opportunity to create a deeper relationship, to create a more impactful result in the life or the business of the people that you're working at. So if you're going to use bonuses, make sure, number one, very clearly they understand what the value is. Number two, make sure that they're relevant to the experience or to the business or to the relationship that you're trying to create. Number three, make sure that they understand very clearly what the potential impact of that bonus is. And number four, make sure that you're articulating it in such a way that they understand that this is something unique to your relationship, it's something unique to your business, or something unique to your product.
Some examples. Years ago, when DVDs first became popular, there was a video DVD club, and when you joined, if you joined and committed to buy a certain number in a certain period of time, they gave you a DVD player free. There's a magazine called Sports Illustrated in the United States. I don't know if it's here. but they have experimented with all kinds of bonuses. One of the bonuses is they give you a radio to take to the games. Another one is they give you a cushion with your favorite team on it that you can take to the games. Another one is they give you a blanket with your favorite team. Another one is they have a swimsuit edition that has nothing to do with sports, but it has a bunch of lovely models in swimsuits that men like to look at. We have a friend in the product business. They sell information products, and they go to other people who do seminars, and they buy bulk tickets that are very valuable, and they give you a free ticket to a seminar if you buy their collection of products. Spike and I were laughing about the English language thing. We said, if I were in Japan right now, and I'm going to throw this out free. Somebody will run with this. I said, you want to really own the market. We were talking about English speaking. We're not trying to be arrogant, but we said it would seem like the more English speaking people had, we were talking about China particularly, the better it would be for their career advancement because it's a growing economy. And I said, if I were in China and I wanted to basically own any training market, I would, because people charge $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 to learn English. I don't know what it costs here, but I said, let's say I'm a training company. I'm training anything else, management, IT, whatever. I would go to corporations and say, if you buy this from us, we'll give you a $6,000 course in English free, and you can take it over a year because you don't care how you get the business. But it's the point I'm making is bonuses can transform two things: the appeal and the preemptiveness, meaning you block everybody else because all of a sudden you've got a proposition that is incomparable. Does that make sense? It's exciting, isn't it? And all you do is find out what bonuses work. But there's one caveat or warning. You've got to test it. Because you may love it. I love this concept of free English classes if you take something else, because all of a sudden you take an industry that's spending, $20, $30 million promoting their English training, and you give it free, and you've got a value already established by everybody else, and you get to take advantage of it. I love that. But it may not work. You may try it, and nobody cares, because it doesn't have the same value as a big brand store or brand school. So you got to test everything. But I'm trying to show you that usually the right addition of the right bonus, and it can be tangible, it can be intangible. You could say, hey, you buy our training and we'll give you free IT consulting, even though we're not an IT company, for 50 hours. I mean, it's whatever combination turns on and excites the prospective buyer, as long as the cost of fulfilling it is affordable. And when it comes to certain bonuses, it gets even more interesting, because now that you understand marginal net worth, now that you understand lifetime value, now that you understand break even on the front end, you could go to certain people who could provide bonuses for you, and you could persuade them to charge you very little or nothing, because you could show them that when the recipient of their bonus that's been packaged with your product is done using it, there's a high likelihood they would go on and start being a cash user. You could even take it to the extreme of saying, and I want a share of that future business, but it gets very exciting. Am I being too complicated, or is this clear?
Let me also...
Clear? Good. Go ahead.
Let me also tie in something we talked about yesterday, how you can utilize bonuses in some different combinations. We talked yesterday about the 3 ways to grow a business: more clients, more frequency, larger transactions. You can use bonuses as an incentive to bring in new clients. You can use bonuses as an incentive to get people to buy larger quantities. You can use bonuses to get people to buy more often. You don't have to use a bonus just to get someone to become a new client. You can use the same strategy, and I would encourage you to do that, because at some point in time it may be more valuable or more profitable for your business for a client all of a sudden to become more frequent in their purchases. And it may be that you want to incentivize them to buy something now because of perhaps oversupply or the ability to buy raw materials in bulk. And if you can incentivize people to buy something now that perhaps it has a profitable impact on your business, Perhaps a bonus would be a way to encourage them to buy now rather than buy later. If they're buying units of 10,000 yen, and you know that you can get a price break or you can tie up the market in terms of supply or in terms of material, if you got that to 100,000 yen, maybe it's very worthwhile for you to give them a very strong incentive, a very strong bonus to increase their level of purchase because it becomes more profitable in your business in other areas.
And for your benefit, we're not trying to waste your time by talking and talking and talking about this just to get closer to lunch. We're doing it because we believe, I know when people laugh fast that they speak English.
What happens if they laugh half
slow?
Fast? No.
Half fast? I don't know. They speak half English. I don't know. We're doing this because each of these elements we're sharing are so powerful, and we don't expect you to use them all. But remember on the first day when I was using my examples, we're doing more of what we're doing, frankly, is working on your sense of a possibility-based paradigm than worrying about you remembering and perfecting. You don't need to remember perfect. You need to change the way you look at possibilities, because I can guarantee your competitors don't think this way. And if I can change the way you think, even if you misexecute a little bit, it'll still work. If you think like this and you try to execute perfectly, it won't work. But if you think like this, you're going to be very, very, very fierce and really undefeatable competitor in the market. Let's see who at the last one is. Spike, you can do the last one.
Well, risk reversal, we're actually going to spend a lot of time this afternoon.
So we don't need to get
too much in depth. But we talked a little bit about, in every transaction, in every relationship, there's an inherent risk. Sometimes it's a great risk, sometimes it's a small risk. But to the degree that you can either, number one, you always have to recognize the risk, but that you can articulate that you understand the risk and position it so that the client or the prospect or the market perceives that risk as being satisfied, being met, or being overcome and being absorbed more fully on your side than theirs, the more apt they are, the more likely they are to enter into a transaction with you as opposed to your competitor.
Okay, now those are the 7. Now we're going to talk about 21 power principles of business builders who become rich, and I'm going to let you in on what's going to happen before we start. None of them are very complex, are they, Spike?
Not at all.
But few of them are being followed regularly or at all by anyone in this room, which means even fewer of your competitors would even know them. So if you can grasp the power of these disarmingly simple concepts and choose the ones that make the best sense to you and start employing and applying them, enormously great things can happen very quickly, even in a bad economy. Even in a bad economy. So let's start. Don't keep your clients from buying. When I used to do seminars, I'd walk on stage, and in a very theatrical way, I would look that way and I would ask a question, and I would say, are you unknowingly limiting and restricting the number of clients who could buy from you, the size of the sales they could be doing with you, the frequency of purchasing they could be doing, the combination, the number of referrals? The answer is normally yes, but you don't do it. You don't wake up on Monday morning and say to yourself, I'm going to go into the office and I'm going to work my heart out all week, 10 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and I'm going to perform a fraction of the impact I can. And I'm going to attract a small number of the leads and the prospects I could, and I'm going to convert a little tiny portion of the ones that I should, and I'm going to accept a fraction of the sale that they could be doing, and I'm going to have them come back very infrequently. You couldn't consciously want that. So obviously you're not aware of the faux pas or the mistakes you're making. My job is to first have you question yourself, not destructively, but in an exciting manner. We have a couple things we talk about throughout the rest of the weekend, and they're 2 overriding philosophies. One is what you want to do is make your business unbeatable. And the reason why is that most businesses we look at are beatable. And they're beatable many different ways depending on the functions they serve, the market they serve, the mechanisms they're currently using to generate revenue. So the question here is, you got to start by questioning and identifying and examining all the things you're doing and looking for what we call, and I'm not making fun of spike, but a spike. There is a concept in business, and it's even more related to marketing, lead generating, conversion, selling, reselling. It's called a greased chute. A greased chute is like a slide, but it's in commercial. A chute is where something comes in and it goes all the way to the bottom. They grease the chute so that the boxes or the materials won't get stuck. A spike is like maybe there's a nail or maybe there's a piece of metal that got bent and it catches it, and the item can't go to the bottom of the chute to be used. Well, you've got to look at your business like a greased chute, and you've got to be able to ask yourself what activities, what assumptions, what's the word I want to use? What disacknowledgments, what failures of recognition are we guilty of now that are keeping clients from buying more often, keeping clients from buying more things?
Let me give you a small example. You know, these could be big things that are in your business or that are missing from your marketing or in your business strategy or missing in your sales presentation, but they could be very small things. Let me give you an example. Say, for instance, that your business hours are from 9 in the morning until 5 in the evening. Well, what if most of your marketplace or the people that you're trying to reach work those same hours, and the only time they can visit your store is from 5 until 10 p.m., and by the time they get off work, they come to your store and your store is closed? What happens if someone is calling to place an order at nighttime and they get caught in your automated voicemail system and they can't figure out how to place an order, and they get frustrated, they hang up the phone and they call someone else who has a live calling center? These could be very, very small things that you could have great marketing, you could have a great product, you could have a great service, great USP, but when it comes time to make the purchase, there's something in the business model, something in the system, or something in the organization that prevents them from buying right away.
Those are great examples, but how do you know? You got to be able to question, to examine, to look. I mean, maybe just do a little study or research and say, how many calls do we get after hours? How many people, let's stay in the store for 1 week at night and just see if anybody shows up and count them and then multiply them times our average sale and see if it would make economic sense. I got started when I was about 25 doing lead generation for financial service companies, for brokerage firms, for mutual funds, for people who sold direct sales and needed a lot of leads, encyclopedia companies. We generated about 6 million leads a year for our clients. And I found out something very much like this. These clients would pay us as much as $50 to $100 a lead to find a prospect and create it for them. And then when they got the lead, they would go to the cheapest, slowest delivery service. It's called bulk mail in the States, to send out the package because they wanted to save $5. They spent $50 on the lead. The lead's enthusiastic and hot today. They would send it out bulk rate. It would take 4 weeks to get there, and they would not understand that enthusiasm diminishes on a daily basis. So speed, completeness of response. You have an idea?
Well, no, I'll give you an example that I actually heard about through one of Jay's colleagues who spoke at one of Jay's programs. And he was in the direct mail business and did a lot of, spent a lot of money on direct mail. And he had a very large direct mail campaign where he sent out a tremendous amount of mail for people to buy a particular product. And he forgot to put the return address on how to send the order back.
Yeah.
It could be something very, very small, very expensive.
Well, that was, yeah, there's another one like it. We had another one that sold insurance to nurses, and he would send out the renewal policies, but he wouldn't put an envelope. And when we said put an envelope in, he added an extra $1 million in sales, all profit. But you got to look, and again, we could spend the rest of the 2 days identifying factors that might be the deterrent. We don't have the opportunity in this kind of a program to do it, but you have the opportunity because I'm teaching you to think at a more granular level. It's not just macro. You got to be able to say, what's the process? What are the sub-processes? How are they doing? If I don't know how they're doing, how can I try to measure? And it's not perfection. Everybody in life, and I think a lot of highly disciplined cultures, they want black and white. They want to know exactly. Sometimes you can't know exactly. It has to be indicative. It has to be anecdotal. But it's better than not knowing at all. And then if you find something that looks to be something you've got to improve or change or pay better attention to or adjust, then you test it out. And if the results improve, you keep being more definitive, and it grows. But this is huge. It's very powerful point. All these points are simple, but I promise most people in your field don't even understand it. If you're the only one that understands it, you have an incredible competitive advantage if you act on it.
Okay, the next one is use test marketing to maximize your sales results. Marketing is a science, it's not an art. Now, you can be very artistic like Jay, where he's got, a great ability to articulate language in very appealing terms. But at the same time, you can learn how to do those things. But the only way that you can really learn what the best way is to market is to test. And let me give you an example. One of the things that Jay was sharing earlier that, there may be snags in the system. One of the things that I would encourage all of you to do is really model out your entire, you can do it with your entire business if you want to get into a re-engineering process, but model out your entire marketing and sales activity. What types of things happen and where they happen and when they happen and how those things happen. Because what you can do is that every time you test an ad, you can test the impact in terms of response. You can test the impact in terms of action taken. You can test the impact in terms of actual purchases. You can test the impact of what happens if you follow up after 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours. You can test the impact that if you model this headline differently, what kind of response do you get in terms of orders or inquiries? But without understanding what the impact is in your entire process, it's very difficult to make decisions. I'll give you an example. About 2 years ago, Jay was writing, I think it was 7 or 8 emails for a program that we were going to do. These were great emails. I mean, he spent a lot of time on them, and Jay's a brilliant
You thought they were great emails.
Yeah, well, they were. I mean, some of them. But the interesting thing is that when Jay writes, a lot of times what he'll do is he'll bring the piece in and say, what do you think? And I'll give him, my reaction and my input. But in this case, he had 7 of them, I believe that it was, and he says, well, put them in the order that you like them the best. And what we did is that we tested all 7 of them. And I asked Jay to do the same, pick the one that he thought was the best. And I think the one that I picked that I liked the best came in like number 5. And I think the one that Jay picked that he liked the best came in like number 3. So we thought that we knew exactly what great marketing was. We thought we knew which ones were the winning pieces. We didn't. The market told us because we tested.
But that's, see, the most liberating and exciting part about all this is you don't have to be me. You might even be better than I am because you're probably more disciplined. As I get older, you do things a little more free-form. But marketing is a science, not an art. Great marketers are made. They're not born. That gives you incredible latitude and incredible certainty that if you take what we're teaching serious, you have an exceptionally high probability, not possibility, of becoming a very, very fine marketer. It's not that hard. And again, you can even become better than I am if you take it more serious. But the one thing is, it's not something that's this mystical, magical, elusive, intangible. It's very, very simple. I don't think there's anything we've shared in the last day and a half that's that intimidating. Is there really? There isn't, is there? That means no. You're saying yes, but I mean, I'm asking for you to confirm that it's not. It's one of those trick questions. There's not a good way to answer it. Let's go on. You can do that. We already did that. Build and profit from a USP. Yes. Certain things, by the way, remember I told you on day 1 I'm going to revisit the same points from lots of different angles? Well, we're doing that now, but because Spike and I, every time we break, we shift what we want to do because this is moving with more and better rapidity than we thought. We're adding some neat things. We're going to do a segment on USP, so it's not practical to give you 5 minutes now when we'll give you a half an hour later this weekend, so we're going to skip that right now. Grow leverage through endorsements, the power of others, the Tom Sawyer School of Business. This is another one. We're going to do at least 2 hours tomorrow on power partnering, on strategic alliances, and on joint venturing and endorsement. So I'm only going to explain the Tom Sawyer School of Business because I doubt if they know much about Mark Twain. In the United States, one of our classic authors is somebody named Mark Twain. I don't know if he's well known here or not. Mark Twain wrote about life in the 1800s on our Mississippi River, which was very charming and colorful. And in all his books, he had these really interesting characters. And one of them was somebody named Tom Sawyer. And Tom Sawyer was this carefree 16-year-old kid who wore a straw hat and smoked a corncob pipe and was barefooted and he walked to the beat of his own drummer. He didn't do what the world did. And one time, his grandmother took him outside and said, "You've got to whitewash or paint this entire fence," which was a drudgerous job. Instead, Tom went in the neighborhood and got all the young kids who were 5 and 8 and explained to them how much fun it would be if they got the chance to paint a fence, and he gave them the opportunity to paint the fence for him. And he sat in the sun smoking his pipe while everyone else painted the fence for him. That's got a little manipulative side to it, but the kids loved it because they got an experience they never would have been. It was joyous for them. We've developed a concept called the Tom Sawyer School of Business. And basically, it is your license or freedom or right to look at whatever you are not strong at, whatever you don't have capital for, whatever you don't have skill sets at, and go out and get it. We teach a course in the States for non-business people on how to engineer passive income. And one of the problems, people coming want to do it, but they're afraid. A lot of people don't know how to sell. A lot of people don't know how to negotiate. A lot of people don't know how to manage. A lot of people don't know how to interface with businesses they might want to do deals with. And we teach them to figure out what they don't want to do and hire somebody else to do it. Because in the world today, in the States, and I'm sure it's no different in Japan, there are probably hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have skill sets that they're not being used, and they'd love to be part of something that they shared ongoing in a variable or a profit-sharing way. You can find skill sets galore. We've gone to people who were high-priced trainers or consultants and said, "We're not going to pay you for your fee, but if we can figure out how to take your skill set, apply it to our business or one of my clients, and see how it impacts sales or savings or performance or production, we'll peg or tie your compensation to that." And we've gotten someone else to do things we couldn't. You can find the resources, human or not, anywhere and everywhere if you have the right mind, and this is just part of it. We're going to get into this later. Spike?
Same with risk
Same
reversal.
thing with risk reversal. When we come back from lunch, Spike's going to be down here doing this. We decided we're going to do a bigger set on risk reversal, and I'm going to go. I've got some really cool stories I'm going to build out, and then I'm going to come down after and do a session on risk reversal and give you a lot of examples so it's very clear. Okay, Spike?
Make quality a top priority. The Japanese culture and Japanese industry, I think, are renowned around the world for quality, and understanding that quality comes from a number of things: consistency, reliability, being able to manage a process so that there's very little deviation, so that when you get 1 or you get 100 or you get 1,000, it's all the same. But quality should be a priority throughout the entire organization. The quality comes from the consistency of your marketing. Does your marketing really articulate what it is that you will deliver in a sales process? Does the sales process really deliver the product at the time you say it will, with the characteristics that you describe, with the price points that you've promised and committed? Does your entire organization have the strategy of preeminence as not only a foundation, but also as a pillar of its culture, so that if a salesperson treats a prospect or a client with the strategy of preeminence, that if they have a problem with the product and they have to call the service department, do they treat the client the same way that the salesperson did? Having consistency, having credibility, having pervasiveness of of your message, of your product, of your sales, of your marketing, having an alignment is part of the quality process. So I would encourage you that it's not just about the product, it's also about the culture, it's also about the credibility of your marketing, of your sales, and the entire process that people enter into and interact with throughout their relationship with you.
And as it says in the second part of this, you have to know what value is defined as being to your client. You may have the most extraordinary manufacturing facilities. You may, buy the highest grade components. You may engineer your product to perform for 10 more years than anybody else. But if that's not the factors that your market appreciates, or conversely, if those factors aren't shared with the market, then it gets you no value. It's not about your sense of value, it's about mine, the consumer.
Let me give you a quick example. Say, for instance, you engineer, produce, market, and sell a very sophisticated piece of technological equipment. And it's state-of-the-art. And every 18 months, under Moore's Law, say it's a computer, every 18 months, that product, if it doesn't become replaced, it becomes obsolete. And if your primary marketing message is that if you buy this computer, it will last for 20 years. No one cares if it lasts for 20 years. No one cares if it lasts for 15 years. They don't care if it lasts for 10 years, because in most cases, they're going to use it for 2 or 3 years at most.
That's a good point. You can do that.
Link your businesses to strong partners. Now, again, I'll use kind of a manufacturing example, but if you're manufacturing a product, you want to have strong partners in terms of your suppliers and all those kinds of things. But when you're doing things like bonuses, or if you're doing joint venture promotions, which we'll get into very deeply tomorrow, if you're warranting things through a risk reversal process that is dependent upon either the product, the service, the support, or the supply of someone else, you want to make sure that you have strong partners, because the more you go out and set up a risk reversal, the more you practice the strategy of preeminence, the more you want to create consistency and quality in what it is that you do throughout your organization, the more people and the more entities, or the more processes, or the more partners that you have to bring in, you have to make sure that that quality extends throughout the entire process, because it's your credibility, it's your relationship, and it's your value that's at stake with the marketplace, with your clients, and with your prospects.
Pay only for results. There are a number of activities in your business environment that you can convert either to pure performance or to significant part performance. The more people get tied to performance, the more invested they are, the more connected they are to the outcome. And if they make a bigger difference, you should want them to make more money. If they don't, you should want them not to. But wherever possible, we believe, and again, we're not trying to go against your management cultures or your views, but we love to have people rewarded for contribution and non-rewarded for non-contribution. And this is about the simplest way to do it. You may not be able, there may be laws that you got to give people minimum wage, but there's no law, I suspect, that you can't convert some of their fixed income to variable and give them a chance to make a lot more, but tie it to specific performance or criteria that makes a profit or a savings impact on your business. Bringing new clients in, cutting costs, accelerating, whatever it is.
Wherever possible, I like to do things in a partnership relationship. And to me, what a partnership relationship means is that I will take care of you and you will take care of me, because we're trying to accomplish the same thing.
Together.
And that if I succeed, you succeed, and we succeed together. If I succeed and you fail, that's not a partnership, and vice versa. So one of the things, especially when you're looking at controlling the quality of your partners, if you can align them to a pay-for-performance type model, that they have a stake in your success and you have a stake in their success, and you have a shared revenue model, or you have a shared profit model, or you have some type of a shared incentive that makes sure that their interests are aligned with your interests and your interests are aligned with theirs, but most importantly, your shared interests are aligned with the marketplace and with your clients.
Manage your assets wisely, both the tangible and intangible, but you can't do that if you don't know what they are. And there's a lot of assets that are intangible, the relationships, the the opportunity costs, the markets, the media. You got to be able to get lists of what your assets are, tangible and intangible, and manage it. Like the gentleman here, I don't know his name, you're in investment. So you understand asset management. Well, if you could take the same attitude and apply it to intangible asset management, there's a lot of leverage there, because most people don't even, in business, don't even look at their intangible assets. That's where we spend most of our time, because that's two things. That's where the highest leverage is, and that's where the biggest sort of gap is in most people's view or vision, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know, when people talk about assets, very often they think of money. They'll think of maybe equipment. They'll think of maybe raw materials. You know, those things are all assets. Sometimes you can get people to move beyond the asset and think about, okay, well, money, you know, is capital, but capital can be more than money. Let me give you an example. For many businesses, they keep track of their bank balance, and that's their cash capital. They keep track of their intellectual property, which in some cases can be capital. But also there's things like knowledge capital, there's things like relationships capital, and those things in many cases can have as much value, if not more, than cash in the bank. For instance, if I needed to have access to a great attorney, a great copywriter, a great marketer, a great sales force, and maybe a great manager, and I don't have a lot of capital. Well, if I have relationship capital, and I know people that would be willing to provide that as part of a partnership or part of a shared interest, that's an asset. If I know that people in my organization who may be focused on certain activities, but yet they have other knowledge that's available, that's an asset. It's knowledge capital. It may not be deployed today, but if by recognizing that I have access to that knowledge capital within my organization, within my network, within my relationships, I can utilize or deploy that capital when it's necessary or when it's needed without having to own that capital all the time.
Good. Borrow winning strategies. Remember funnel versus tunnel? And remember I went through that explanation of optimization yesterday? And I believe it's in your workbook. But you can't really optimize till you figure out the game you're trying to play. And then you got to figure out all the alternatives, or not all, but many of the alternatives and additional ways to go about it. And that means you got to travel outside of your industry. And we're trying through the process of this 3-day process to give you a high level of introduction, understanding, and experience to what's possible. But when you go back to your offices, to your businesses, to your cities, we hope you will continue this process, and we will give you, on the last evening or the last afternoon, a process to keep growing by contacting all your friends and asking them how they sell, and looking at other industries and having them collect for you the promotions in their trade magazines so you can look at how people do things differently. And we're going to give you all kinds of things, from on your way home, stopping at businesses and starting up a discussion to see how they look at life different. We're going to give you processes like going through the yellow pages and finding industries you've never understood, and calling people at lunchtime and just saying, hey, I'm Jay Abraham, I do seminars, you're whoever you are, what's your first name? Kago, and you do whatever you do. I'm going to tell you how we market, tell me how you market. And you got to be committed that this isn't a static process. We're starting you on the path, but you got to keep expanding it and sustaining it so that it'll take root and become permanent in you, and we'll tell you how later.
I'll make 2 quick points about this. One is that when I go into an organization, I can tell you that there's a question that I can ask, and depending on how they answer, I can almost invariably predict whether that business is going to be successful in the future or whether it's a business that can be impacted through consultation. And that is when you introduce a new idea or you introduce something that someone else is doing that perhaps could be adapted.
Someone else outside of that business.
Someone outside of that business. Could be in their industry or it could be outside of their industry. And you present that to them and they say, that's not what we do here. To me, that is one of the most rigid forms of thinking, but it's a stagnation philosophy. And stagnation philosophies in today's world, with economies changing, with markets changing, with everything else changing, you cannot stagnate. You cannot remain the same and be successful in the future. The second point that I would make to you is that optimization, in most cases, maybe not all cases, but many cases, optimization will come by looking within an industry or by looking within an organization. Okay, what is it that we're doing and how can we make it a little bit better? How can we put better controls in? How can we eliminate the deviations in a process? That's optimization. Innovation, in most cases, breakthroughs will come outside of your industry, and being able to see what someone else is doing in another industry and being able to apply it within your industry and be the first person to do it is one of the foundational aspects of creating innovation. So if you're only looking in your neighborhood, you're only looking in your market, you're only looking in your industry, or you're only looking in your company for breakthroughs, that is the most expensive, least efficient, probably the least effective strategy for looking for effective change.
And if you want, I want to give you a comment and a metaphor. The comment is this. A gentleman earlier was talking about Peter Drucker, profoundly brilliant management strategist. He just recently died a year or so ago. And I talked about Deming. But one of the things Drucker said, and I'm not going to do him justice because I'm going to paraphrase. He said it more clearly and more eloquently. But he said, if you're not constantly committed to making your business, your model, your products obsolete, you can rest assured that your competitors are committed to doing it for you and to you. So if you don't do it first for yourself, someone else is going to do it to you. And that's the grim reality of business life, don't you think? Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second is think about this as a metaphor for what that'll stimulate you to keep wanting to do this. I would presume that almost everybody in this room has traveled. I don't believe you all live in Tokyo, in the area, so you've traveled certainly outside your city before. I presume most of you have traveled outside of Japan before. And I suspect a lot of you have probably even traveled outside of Asia before. Each time you travel further outside your home, you should normally see a broad array of fascinating and really different ways of living life, different architecture, different clothes, different morals, different belief systems, religion, different geography, different everything. And when you see all those, it should broaden your mind. There's a phrase, traveling broadens the mind. It's got to be universal. Traveling broadens the mind. But traveling amongst different industries broadens the mindset. It gives you a much more powerful sense of how much more is possible for the time, the effort, the opportunity, the access to the market. And you've got to be committed that this is only the beginning. This isn't the end. Everyone thinks when they come to one of my seminars that it's the whole process. It isn't. It's just the preparation. What you do with it depends on what you do when you go home. This is not anything more than getting your mind in gear, getting you aware of the tools, the weaponry, the factors, the forces available. And then you got to go home and figure out what to do with it and then do it. And then keep doing it in a systematic and a constant, sustained way. Go ahead, Spike.
Be proactive to outsell the reactive and always think ahead. A couple of ways to do this. Something that I see in a lot of selling organizations and a lot of companies is that they will sell a product or a service to a client, and they will assume that that client or that person who purchased the product or service will call when they need something. Well, in some cases they do, in many cases they don't, but even if they do, it may not be at the right time, in the right way, or for the right reason, or in the right quantity, or they may not be aware of a new product or service that you offer, but in some cases they may go to someone else because that person contacted them. That's one thing. You want to make sure that once you sell someone, you follow up and you put in the sequential selling systems and marketing systems that give you front end, back end, cross sales, those types of things. But in addition to that, you also want to be anticipating what it is that that client may need in their business in the future. And it may be something you supply. It may be something that you can have access to. It may be something that you can develop a partner who can provide. Because, again, when you go back to the strategy of preeminence, it has a fundamental element in there, and that is that you have the ability to provide a deep and abiding understanding and concern and care for your client or for your prospect. And what better way to show that you really care about someone is being able to anticipate what it is that they'll need, or what it is that they want, or what it is that they would like to have in their business that they're not currently getting. Now, in some cases you can develop the product, in some cases you can source the product, in some cases, you know, you may not even be able to do either of those, but you may be able to recommend the product. But the people that are most effective are the people that are creating the most value through that relationship, ultimately creating the most revenue, and realistically creating the most profit and the most benefit for both sides.
Good. And it says the championship billiard concept. If you watch really world-class billiard players, not pocket billiards, but regular billiard players, every shot they take is designed to move the ball to a different strategic position. And that's the sort of, I'm trying to give you metaphors that you can easily use as a lifetime reference. In the United States, one of our all-time great hockey players is a man named Wayne Gretzky. And Wayne Gretzky has a quote that's pretty neat. He said the reason he was so much better than anybody else he competed against is that all the other hockey players went to where the ball was hit. He went to, or where the puck was hit. He went to where he knew it would end up, and he always was the only one there because he basically thought of it. They're always following the puck. He's thinking it's going to go there and end up here. I'm going there. You guys go there, and I'll preempt everybody, and it's a way of thinking. Use non-ads ads. We talked about direct response. Your advertising should be educational. They should be reader-based more often than not. They should tell stories. They should talk about benefits. They should provide a call to action, some incentive, some inducement, something that people want. It can be free information, a report, a DVD, a chance to talk to your staff, to come and meet your engineers, to tour your factory, to attend your seminar, to visit your booth space, to get a transcript of a speech that the president made, to get a book that you wrote, anything that will evoke a starting relationship. I have a phrase, and I think it's very, again, I'm trying to give you graphic, metaphoric ways to simply grasp this forever. You have two choices in life. Either you solicit people, which is a hard sell, or you stimulate people soliciting you. And when people solicit you, it's a lot easier to sell because they're already interested. So you want ads, and that can mean mailing ads, it can be magazine ads, radio ads, trade show journal ads, website offers that provoke people to seek you out. Because when they seek you out, in its pure sense, they're raising their hand and they're soliciting you. They're not ready to buy always, but they're soliciting you to, remember, they're silently begging to be led. Spike?
Turn one-time clients into lifetime buyers. We talked a lot about how to do that, either by providing other products, by providing other services, by being able to nurture the relationship so that it becomes a long-term, long-lasting relationship and not simply a transaction. Don't really.
I don't think we need a lot more. Find and use all your hidden assets. We're going to talk a lot about that. Again, we respect your intelligence, and we tell you going in we have a lot of redundancy purposely because different groups either don't get it or, very frankly, because we do a lot of extemporaneously commenting. Sometimes Spike and I are much richer in our comments, and sometimes we're more fragmented. I think we've done not a fabulous, but a full enough job in most of these that if we are redundant, we'll move on because we have some other components later on in the program that'll revisit this, and it's not necessary, and we only would just visit the outer periphery right now. So let's continue. 7 ways. Spike, you wanted us. These are 7 ways for you to have a winning sales presentation.
Sure. The first one is that you have to say something that gets the prospect's attention, something that's self-serving to them. It's not necessarily something you're proud about. It's not something that necessarily that tickles your fancy and gets you excited. It's got to be something that says...
Can I interrupt, though?
Yeah.
When he said you're not proud of, he doesn't mean something you're embarrassed about.
He said it means it's not about you. I just
Right.
want to clarify.
Yeah, no, it's a
that
good
then
point.
came out wrong, and that's not what you meant.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, obviously, you don't want to create a sales presentation about something that you're embarrassed by. But it's really about making sure that when you write an ad or you begin a sales presentation, that it really is about something that's going to get the prospect or the person that you're speaking to sit up and pay attention and say, "There's something in here that has stimulated my interest, and I want to hear more. I want to see more.
Them,
I
not
want to
about
read
you.
more. I want to
you
do
attitude.
more."
That's number one.
Number one. Second, tell the reader or the listener or the viewer why they should be interested in what it is that you have to say. The benefit, the reason why. We've talked a lot
What's
about.
in it for them?
Third, tell them why they should believe in what you say is true. Now, it could be an endorsement. It could be scientific research. It could be independent lab
Comparative
studies.
data.
It could be almost anything that says
Press.
that what you're saying is valid. What you're saying is true. What you're saying has credibility. It's not just you're saying it to create a sale. You're doing it because you have evidence to support it, and you have evidence to have them continue on. Fourth, prove that it's true. I mean, in many cases, you can use an endorsement or you can use a testimonial that says, this is better because this person says so. That provides credibility. That provides some evidence. But if you can provide something that's absolute proof that says that 97% of our clients who bought this product responded to this survey and said that they were absolutely delighted with the product or service that they received from us.
And that's good, but that's abstract. It's even better if you said 97% said that their business went up 42% and their costs went down 22%.
Right. So the more proof and the more evidence that you can provide, and if you can do it through independent studies, if you can do it through statistical analysis, if you can do it through comparative data, the more credibility your product will have, the more credibility your sales presentation will have, and the more credibility your relationship will have with that client or with that prospect. Fifth, list all the benefits of your product or service. The reason why you want to do that, because you know very clearly what the benefits are for your product or service. You probably know that there's some things that make you superior. But if you don't tell the prospect, if you don't tell the client, if you don't tell the marketplace all of those things, number one, they won't know it. Number two, you don't know which one of those are going to be most appealing or most exciting or most valuable to them at any given time. And if you only take maybe the top two or three, you may be missing the one trigger or the one area of motivation that is going to have that prospect have the greatest level of motivation to buy from you, but also to buy at this time. Sixth, tell the reader, the listener, the viewer, the person you're sitting across from in a sales presentation how to order. And I shared the example with the guy who sent the direct mail piece out, and he forgot to put the return label on. He probably got a lot of people that were very excited, probably got their attention, listed all the benefits, got, proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that they should buy the product, and they had no idea how to order. So make it easy, make it clear, and make sure that it's something that's reliable, because if someone gets all this value through the presentation of the process and they go to order and they can't get through on the telephone line, or the emails bounce, or they can't get through to the website, or the salesperson didn't bring an order form, basically it's a snag in the system. And seventh, ask them to order right away. Don't ask them to order 60 days from now or 90 days or 120 days from now. One of the things that I'll share with you, and I'll share it with you this afternoon, to me, there's no such thing as a lead. In the U.S., we call someone who may be interested in buying but didn't buy a lead. There's no such thing as a lead. Either there's a sale or there's a non-sale. Now, non-sale people, sometimes you can do follow-ups, but a lot of times salespeople, and if you have sales organizations, this is not uncommon, and I've seen it around the world. Sometimes salespeople will use having leads as an excuse not to go out and do sales. Well, I got 35 leads over here. These people all have had interest, and they may buy someday, sometime, somehow, some way, for some reason, but I don't know exactly when. That doesn't exist. Either they bought something or they haven't bought something. And if they haven't bought something, what is it that you can do to make them buy, or can you find someone else who is interested in buying? But get them to buy now.
Okay. Now, is this part of it? No.
No.
Okay, there is a concept here, and it's a little delicate because you want it based on the strategy of preeminence, but you've got to look within and say, do I have order takers or sales makers? Order takers or sales makers? And most businesses don't have sales makers, do they?
Nope.
They have people who just take orders and they don't guide, they don't take an authoritative position, they don't use respectful, benefit-based persuasion and really compelling consultative selling techniques to make things happen. I'll use my example. It's somewhere in this, I think. Did we take it out, the three kinds of people in business?
It's still in here, but we just didn't cover it last
I
time.
believe there are three types of people in the business world, and particularly entrepreneurs. The people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people to whom things keep happening to. Most people are in the second category. If you're in the third category, you see yourself as a victim. And no amount of guidance, ideas, mentoring, breakthrough guidance will do anything. But if you're somebody who makes things happen, you want to move yourself to a higher level of making more things happen bigger, better, faster, and more often. If you're somebody who doesn't make things happen, you want to move to that. If you're a victim, you want to get out of that role right away. And you got to do some soul searching and be true to yourself and ask. Speaking of which, I want to make a very positive comment to most and a slightly constructive comment to a few. What do you think it's going to be?
You're very political on that, Jack.
I know. Usually I get mad, but I'm too enjoying this group. I am very impressed because I'm watching the vast preponderance, the majority, the bulk of you taking copious and detailed notes, and that's good. But I see a few of you, I'm not going to point fingers, but some over here and some over there and some over there, who are not taking any notes at all. Now that means either you have a photographic memory, which might be possible, you have a diluted and a very misguided sense of how much you'll be able to reconstruct your impressions when you go home, or you don't care. And I'm not making judgment. I'm just saying that Spike and I are trying from the depths of our heart to contribute a lot more than you would even be needing to be satisfied, because we want you to be so well prepared from so many points of vantage, from so many different ways of understanding, to go out and propel your businesses to greatest or to higher greater things. And it saddens me, and I think it saddens you, when people don't take interpretive notes. And I know it's hard, and I know sometimes you don't do that, but this is the one time you might want to do it, because we're trying to share with you, it's literally the keys to the kingdom if you want to put it in the lock and turn it and open it and actuate. So those of you who are not taking notes, you have your motivations, but if I were you, I would put my thinking hat on. I would split the page, I would write down the literal, and then I would take the effort to mentally extrapolate and try to figure out what is it that should mean to my business. What action, what transaction could I take to use that productively and profitably when I get home? Comment?
No.
Go ahead.
No, we've already covered that.
We've already covered that. We've already talked about preemptive advantage, the only viable solution. Work with other people's money, OPI, other people's efforts, OPI, other people's what's OPI?
Influence.
Influences, OPR, other people's resources. We have a list, and I'll see if I can find it, that someone made up in Australia, of 120 different OPs, other people's things, other people's relationships, other people's distribution, other people's sales forces, that you can get leverage off of, but you can't get leverage off of till you recognize it. So at lunchtime, I'll see if I can find that list, and maybe we'll share some of them, and then we'll see if we can challenge them to come up with some better ones themselves.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Get twice as much done in half the time. A couple of secrets. One is that as a business owner or as a business professional or someone who is committed to high levels of success, first thing you want to do is make sure you're spending on your time and your energy on the things that you're best at, the things that are going to have the biggest impact in your business, the things that you're most passionate about. Because if you focus on what it is that you're best at and the things that have the biggest impact in your business or in your marketplace or in your relationships with your clients, you'll be more successful. You may not have any more time, but you'll be spending your time on the right things. You'll be spending your time on the most significant things. If you spend it on the things that you're most passionate about, what it does is that it allows you to have the energy, it allows you to have the enthusiasm, it allows you to have the interest and attention and focus that's necessary to make sure that you're continuing to do it over long periods of time. Now, how do you do that? Well, one of the things you have to do is kind of take an inventory of, what you're best at and what it is that you're most passionate about and what it is that's going to have the most significant impact on your business or your marketplace or your career or your job. But also, you have to have the ability to manage and be able to monitor where you're spending your time. I mean, think about this. How many times have you been involved in something that's very, very strategic, something you're thinking about very deeply that's going to have a tremendous impact on your business, and the phone rings, and you get up, you walk away from your desk, you go over and you pick up the phone, and it's something that could have waited, or it's something that was, probably interesting but not necessarily vital to your business, and you go back and start working on the thing that was most important, the thing that was most impactful, the thing that was most significant in your business, and you lost your train of thought. But even if you didn't lose your train of thought, taking that interruption, taking the time to do that, wasn't the thing that was going to have the highest impact on your business at that moment. I utilize a lot of sales examples. I've seen salespeople sitting in a sales presentation with a very, very significant prospect or a very important client, and their cell phone rings, and they take out their cell phone and have a 2 or 3 or 5 minute conversation. Now, you might still get the sale, you might still maintain that relationship, but it certainly isn't the highest and best use of your time and your energy, and it certainly isn't the most strategic thing in your business. But even if it has no negative impact, it took you longer to get that important thing done. It took you longer to get the thing that was getting the twice as much done in half the time. And you got something done, but it wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the most important thing.
We had a guy one time spoke for us in London, and he was a very renowned retailer of electronic components. And he set the Guinness World Record for selling more stereo equipment per square foot of retail space than anybody in all Europe. And he had a really weird process. He was chauffeured around in limousines everywhere he went, and he had limousines chauffeur all of his managers. And I had a group in the audience. He spoke. I had a group in the audience like many of you, and they were nice entrepreneurs, small, medium. A few of them were real large. And a couple of them were offended by that kind of elite attitude, and they challenged him with questions on the podium, and he said something which I'll never forget. He said, "Is your time worth more than $10 an hour?" And he said, "If it is, I think if you don't want to have a chauffeured limousine, fine, have a little, little tiny car, but you could use the hour commute to work and back so much more productive, calling people, focusing, reading, thinking, meditating, and that's a higher and better use of your time than going like that and fighting traffic and honking." And I thought that was very wise, but yes?
I just want to make one additional
Yeah,
point.
go ahead.
We talk a lot about strategy and the importance of strategy. Being strategic in terms of how you use your time can be one of the most impactful things on your business, your career, and your life. There's a colleague of mine, and he's somewhat of a friend. I mean, we've had dinner a few times, but he's very, very, very successful in developing real estate in Mexico and selling that real estate to investors in the United States. And he had a small company, but eventually it had grown to about a $500 million company. Had a lot of employees, made a whole lot of money. And he was the guy, along with his business partner, who started this company. And as it got bigger and as it got bigger, the demands on his business and the demands on him got more complex, and he had to spend more time doing things other than what it was that he was most passionate about. He also got distracted and got pulled into a lot of meetings that were probably not the best use of his time and certainly weren't the most impactful things or the things that he was best at in his business. And we were on a cruise together, and he'd asked me the question because he knew that I'd done a lot of executive consulting and a lot of executive mentoring and coaching. And he said, what should I do to try to get my focus back? And I said, well, look, you're pretty successful in business. You have a lot of resources. What I would do is if you have someone, I'd appoint them. If you don't have someone to appoint, I would hire them, and I would have them follow you around every single day and write down what you've done every minute of the day for the next 2 weeks. If you have to go to the washroom, have them stand outside the washroom and write down how much time you spent. Sit down and evaluate based on that criteria, and it's something that Jay has taught for years. Based on that criteria, what is the things that you're doing that have the biggest impact? How much time are you actually spending on the things that have the biggest impact? What things have little or no impact or can be done by somebody else that you can delegate? And what things are you doing that perhaps you could do and maybe should do, but you really don't like it or you're not very good at it? And how can you subsidize that? How can you get someone else to do that? Or how can you allocate it to another resource or outsource it?
There's a concept that we talk about sort of assumptively, but I've never explained. It's called highest and best use theory. You've got to get the highest and best use of your time, your opportunity, your staff, your efforts, and you can't do that if you're not aware, first of all, of how you're using your time and your opportunities now. And it goes back to that very first point. We're going to do some homework on that at lunch. We've got to hurry to get them out. Use direct mail, sequential marketing, but use it right. We explained that pretty well yesterday, didn't we? Developing multiple income sources. We're going to visit it again, but that's the Power Parthenon. Remember the pillars we talked about and the 3 ways? Go ahead.
And know your niche. I think I shared this a little bit yesterday. You know, it used to be that we had these big markets, and we went to mass market, then we went to micro markets, then we went to niche markets, and now we're into sub niches and micro niches and nano niches, and it's just gotten much more refined. You know, people have so many choices, and they have so many opportunities and so many ways to buy a product or a service that unless you know how to appeal to the people who are going to be benefited most, unless you know how to identify the people that are going to want your product service the most, and unless you know how to transact and interact and reach those people that want you the most or want your product the most or have the greatest need for your product, you can spend a lot of time in advertising, you can spend a lot of money on marketing, you can spend a lot of money on sales training and bringing a lot of salespeople in, but if you can't reach the people who are most apt to buy from you, it's a loss of torque, it's a loss of resources, it's a loss of impact, and it's a loss of efficiency and effectiveness. Let me give you just one final point on it. Jay was saying earlier about, you know, using ads to drive people to come to you as opposed to you going out and trying to reach people. If you're a salesperson or a sales manager, you have a sales team, and you know that every time somebody gets 100 prospects and say that they close 15%, you know, some industries that's good, some industries it's not so good. That means 85 people that they went out and they contacted, that they called on the phone, or they went out and solicited on the street, or they met at a network meeting, they weren't able to close those people. Now, part of the reason is that you have to go out and you have to spend time, you have to find those people, and they may or may not be the right people, and you spend a lot of energy, spend a lot of money trying to reach large numbers of people. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather have 25 people who called me and wanted to engage in my product or my service than I would having to go out and try to find 100 people, even if I was a really good closer. Because that means, first of all, you know, you're going to have to filter through the people who really don't want you. You're going to have to convince them and educate them to try to make the decision to buy with you. When you're marketing and by knowing your niche and by being very focused and very targeted, you can get the right people coming to you for the right reasons and in the right way and at the right time. And once you do that, now it's just a question of creating the transaction in the right way.